Hey guys, the most awaited video tutorial is here. How to create a referral link, share it with your friends, track how many people signed up, how to increase the referral points. We are going to see a lot of stuff today. And this covers for both Telegram and for Facebook Messenger as well. So, like truly multi-channel. I wouldn't say omni-channel right now, but I would say this is more multi-channel approach right now. So let's get into this. So the first step is we need to create a ref URL for Messenger and Telegram flows. So ideally, you need to have a target flow in mind. So when you are sharing a URL, you need the user to start up from a flow. So I'm going to use my example of my quizbot, trivia games quizbot. So I'm going to show. Obviously, when somebody enters the ref URL, it's going to be from the welcome screen, right? So I'm just going to first create a ref URL. Let me just go to tools and then from there ref parameters and just add a new ref. I already created ref URL ref parameter here, so let me just edit this. Yeah, you can see this is my ref parameter, refer friends, and the response, the flow that I'm going to send is the welcome message. So this is like the default welcome message. But I'm going to add a payload actually. So which is that payload will be stored to a custom field called user AID, right? So now the common nomenclature we'll be using is that it's going to be user A, there's a user B. So user A is the actual player, and user A wants to refer his friend user B into the flows, right? So now we have user A ID, user B ID, which is going to be the user ID of the respective users. And then there is going to be other custom fields like user A name, user B name. So obviously I will show you why we want to do this and how we want to do this. So honestly saying, let me just show one more thing. So for example, there is already default referral tracking system in Chatrace. Okay, so the Chatrace team has already built a referral tracking system. They have a different system where they say like we need to use this method, and using a rule called user referred new user, you can do that. Okay, and they also show how to increase points and so on and so on. But then in my system I'm going to just go a couple of steps beyond this. So this is like you can say a basic flow, but in my system I'm going to go beyond this referral system where we are going to send notifications whenever a new referral has happened. So that's the reason we are tracking the users A and B's names, their Facebook IDs and so on. Okay, so let's get back to the flows now. Like I said, so I'm going to store this in the user AID, right? So now once this is done, okay, oh by the way, this is for Facebook Messenger. So right now I'm going to show parallelly for both Messenger and Telegram, so it's easier to like show the difference in both the approaches. And right now we don't have an omni-channel URL available, so technically we need to create two different URLs for Telegram and Facebook Messenger. So now I'm creating a second. This is a second ref URL. This is for Telegram. So there's a small difference here. I'm just using -tg with the name, and then so I'm also presenting them to a different step because right now Chatters doesn't provide us like we can't generate a single ref URL for both Facebook and um, Telegram. So the team is working on that. But then for my use case, I'm just doing it this way. So I'm also again storing this. I'm storing the payload in user AID. So this one remains the same, right? Now let's go to the main flow. So now let's say you would have noticed my menu URL saying refer a friend, right? So the refer a friend actually redirects users to this flow. So you can see it's a omni-channel URL. So any block where you can actually do a Telegram or a Facebook Messenger, but then I'm using it omni-channel because this block can be sent to both Telegram users and Facebook Messenger users. So I'm using an omni-channel block here. So just giving them the intro, like you can forward this URL to your friends, and then I'm using a condition, current channel condition, whether it's Facebook Messenger. If yes, I am actually sending them the ref URL. So like you saw, so this, let me just show you the, so this is the ref URL for Facebook Messenger, okay, and this is the ref URL for Telegram. So let me just show this. So this is normal ref URL. Now what we are doing here is actually we are adding the user ID as a payload. So now when all this flow is happening in perspective of user A. Like let's say for example Deepak. Now I'm going through this. So when I'm clicking the refer friend, this message is generated. So the URL will be something like let me see if it is available. Yeah, so this is my referral URL. You can see here, right? So this is my user ID. Now I am forwarding this to somebody. Let's say I'm forwarding this to Mark, or I'm forwarding this to Lucia or somebody else, right? So that will have this user ID will be replaced. Now the same thing in the same flow I'm also having, if the current channel is not messenger, I'm checking whether current channel is telegram. So I'm doing this individually because obviously when we have more flows like WhatsApp, when I'm planning to do WhatsApp, SMS, or Google, or whatever it is, Google messages, so I'm just adding, I will be adding it individually. Or maybe in the future when omni-channel URL is implemented, that time I'll just remove everything and just have one omni-channel URL. Who knows? So right now I just checked whether the current channel is Telegram. You can see here the message type is Telegram, right? And you can see I've created the ref URL here and is the refer friends FNTG and user ID. The concept is the same. The payload is stored into this particular. The payload is the user ID and it is stored into user A ID, right? So this is a URL users get. Now let's actually go through the flow. So now let's say I'm clicking refer a friend. So you can see this, and then you get your referral URL is m.me trivia games, and now I can forward this to somebody else who will click on the message. Now let's talk all this flow we spoke in terms of user A, right? Maybe let me just add a note here saying like this flow is for user A. This flow happens for user A, right? Now, this URL is sent to user B. Let's say I sent it to Mark. Now Mark clicks on the URL. So guess what happens? Now we have the payload being stored here, right? So this value gets stored in the payload. Now, for example, let's say, okay, now let me just open up my page. So this one, this is my Facebook profile. Now let's say this is user B. User B has clicked on the URL, and when that happens, okay, now I deleted all those URLs. So let me just hold on there. Okay, so now let's do a small test, right? Now let me click this URL. I made some changes now, so this should work. So basically what has happened is now I am user B. I've clicked on user A's referral URL, and you can see like the ref URL has started here, right? Obviously right now it may not go to further flows because I have some failsafe in place, but I wanted to showcase something else in the back end. So now let me refresh my page ID. If you scroll down here, you can see like now this information are filled, right? User A ID, user A name, user B name. So user A ID is basically me, like the user A. So that is, this is a curve. This is a payload that is being stored here. And then now you can see like there is no user A name. So basically how did this come? So user B, that is again the referral. So for example, let's assume this is Mark, right? So now let's see what happens in this case. Now this particular flow happens in the perspective of user B. Now once the user clicks on that, there is a rule that triggers. Okay, so So I have a rule that says when the value of user ID changes, right, it triggers a flow. So now, for example, when user B, when he clicks on that link, the payload is stored in this user A. So which means this value gets changed, and this when this then this automatically this rule is triggered, and this action is performed once because like the affiliate is going to be tracked only once, right? And you can see like it actually fires another flow. Now, what happens in this flow is basically I'm just going to show this from off, and then I'll show the next steps in the next step. So we are going to add a tag. Obviously, like this thing, this is a old player. So because there are other conditions in place, so it's entirely up to you how you handle that. So I'm going to set a custom field user B name to full name. Okay. Um, and then I'm actually have a couple of external requests in play. So what we are going to do is we are going to send the user ID of user A, that is player A, and get the details of them because we need to we need to collect the name. We need to identify who collected that name. So we click this. We are doing a get request. So basically, everything happens from Swagger. So obviously I'm using appcontext.com because I'm using a white label solution on my own white label platform. So if you're using Chatrace, it will be chatrace.com/swagger. So what we are going to do is we are going to send a request to this particular endpoint /user/user ID, right? Now the only difference is instead of user ID, it's going to be user AID. So we are going to send a external request to the system to get information about the user AID. So now this is a user request. It's going to be a get URL, and it's going to be api.appcontext. You can actually see here. So this is a base URL, and it's obviously it needs to be HTTPS, and this is a base URL, and it will be get request, and then this is the endpoint, right? Okay, this was I was testing this, so it has to be user AID. Okay, so now we need to send the access token and accept. So obviously this is like how you create a external request. We'll maybe if you're not familiar with it, we'll look into a different tutorial. But basically, I'm creating external request with access token and accept application JSON, and then I'm going. So let's actually do a test. So basically you get all the information about this particular user ID, right? So in this, we are going to extract the full name because we need the full name. We need the email ID, right? So we do a response mapping. We just do a dollar dot full name to user A name and dollar dot email to user A email, right? So these custom fields are stored now. So now you have the pretty much all information about the actual referrer who referred the user B. So you have the user AID. You need the user AID because you need to send it through the API call. And once that is done, you get the user A name, you get the user A's email ID. Why do we need user A email? I'll show you why. So save this. So once that is done, now depending on your flow, referral flow, how you want to do it. Let's say you want to add some points to the user and all that stuff, right? So like for example, in my case, whenever a new referral is added, whenever a new player is referred, I give 1,000 points. I add 1,000 points as a bonus to the player one to user A. So what I do is I'm going to set that up. So I'm going to actually add a tag. So the way this is going to happen is this is through another rules, okay? Because I don't want to do multiple like add multiple values through here. So what I'm doing is I'm going to add a tag to user A whenever the user is being referred, whenever user B is being referred. So now what happens is, let's say I have created a tag. Let me just show. Okay, so let me just show you the tag I created. So I have created a tag called got new referral. Okay, and I'm just copying this ID, the tag ID. I'm just copying this, and then I'm actually going to send another API call for this particular user ID. So what I'm going to do is, whenever a new user is being referred, I'm going to add a tag to this particular user A. So why I'm doing it, I'll just show you. So this is going to be a post request, and again the base URL is the same appcontext.com. And then again, if you look at API docs, you can actually see there is a post. So in the post, it's user ID slash tags slash tag ID. Okay, so I'm going to use this particular endpoint. So it says add a tag to the user, right? So I'm going to use this particular endpoint, and I'm going to add a tag. So this is the tag ID I created. I had created got new referral, and it will be added to the user EID. Okay, and right now it's just an access token, and I'm not going to send any other dashboard mapping and all that stuff. So when you do a test, it actually should say true. Okay, if there's any error, it will say, it will give you some of the error code, it will give the error response here. Okay, so once this is done, so now basically user A has a tag, right? So now let's actually refresh this page and see what happens. So you can see there is a, okay, looks like this one didn't go through, maybe it happened here. Okay, it didn't happen. So let me just do, yeah, user ID is fine. Then why did the tag fire actually? Because there's a user ID. Let me just review this flow now. So what's going to happen is it will send API call, get the information about user A, then it will add a tag to user A, and then it will go to the next steps. Okay. So now let me refresh my settings page again. Ah, oh, this is strange. Why is Okay, I figured out why we are not able to see the tag, because I'll explain it to you in a bit. So technically, what happens here is we are basically adding a tag to the user. Okay. Now there is a rule. Again, there's another new rule I created where it says whenever a tag is added, perform a set of actions. So we need to basically, this is adding the referral points. Okay. So let's look at this rule. So now what happens in this case is, let's say, when once the user B has joined, so user A, that's me in this case, a tag is applied, right? So now this rule happens is when this tag is applied, it performs a set of actions. Okay, so the actions are, it actually adds the referral bonus. So in this case, the my custom field is referral coins. It increases the number by 1,000. So technically 1,000 points are added. Okay, then I'm also tracking how many referrals are being sent. So number of referrals increase the number by one, because I'm tracking per user how many people they are referring. So if you have noticed my previous video about tracking the leaderboard and all, I have number of referrals as a metric displayed there. So that's the reason I'm doing this. And you can see here remove tag, right? Because obviously this is going to be a multiple time of rule. This is not a one time rule. So every time some new user is referred, this rule will trigger. So that's the reason we are removing this tag, and this is why we didn't see it. I couldn't find it here because it was like it happens in an instant, and the tag gets removed from here. Okay, so once this is done, so all this is happening in the backend. Remember that all the rules are happening in the backend. So this is like, this doesn't wait for the flow to get over. So all this, like the two rules that we saw, right? The when the user A ID information being collected, and the this information getting populated here. See all this information, user A email, AID, this all this for information being populated, and then this particular rules getting work, adding referral points. All these things are happening in the backend. Just remember that, because technically speaking, once the user B clicks on that ref URL, he starts going through the flow. So he doesn't even know all these actions are happening in the backend, right? So just remember that. So all this, like whatever is happening here, everything, all these flows are happening in the backend. Now, what I'm doing is actually once this is done, I'm actually checking a condition for user A email. So now the idea is this is where we can actually use your own creativity how you want to do this. So my intention here is whenever a new referral joins, I want to inform my player A, user A, that a new referral has joined, and so is a player that he referred. So this is the reason we are collecting all this information: user A name, B name, user A email, and so on. So I'm actually, but then there are chances that sometimes the user wouldn't have provided their email ID, right? So it's not a mandatory in my program right now in my quiz. Uh, so I'm actually checking whether user A email contains at. I tried using has any value, but then unfortunately the condition fails. So even if it's empty or unset, it fails. So to be on the safe side, I'm adding it as at. Okay. So right now, if it doesn't have anything, if let's say the email is blank, then I just drop it off here. So you can leave it. Uh, Now, so we are sending them an email. So right now this communication is through email, but then here, like I said, you can play around with your creativity. Like you want to send them Telegram notifications, you want to send them Facebook Messenger notifications, not admin notify, player notification. Like just send a normal message saying whatever we have done here, we can send it there. So it's entirely up to you. Right now, I'm just sending them an email. So I have created an email topic already called new referral alert. So from my email ID to, so this is the user A email, and you can see here now this is the reason I'm using all this macros, user B name, and then yeah, there's the image as well. So I'm just making this colorful as much as possible, right? So pre-header, I mean, technically it doesn't work for me, but then if it works, or else it doesn't matter. So this is image block, and then it's like user A name, user B has joined trivia games using your referral link. So obviously it's entirely up to you. And then I just say check wallet balance. So basically I'm bringing them back into my flow. So when they click on this button, it will actually go to my bot flow. Like I already have a separate flows called to check the messenger points balance. So they'll enter into the bot again, either to Telegram, or again this is a omni-channel thing. So it can be Telegram or it can be messenger. It doesn't matter. So it's entirely set up that way. So this part is entirely customizable. It's like it's not even required, but then I just wanted to have that notifications being sent, so that the user also gets like, okay, I referred so many people, I referred so many people, and so on, and all that stuff, right? Now, if you notice, I'm just doing it from here, right? So there are certain fail safes in place I have added. For example, let's say what in my example, I clicked on my own referral link, right? So I clicked on my own referral link, and then the flow went ahead. But then that's not ideal case. We don't want that to happen. Like we don't want somebody to click on their own referral link and then the flow starts, then the stats get messed up, and so on. So we don't want that to happen. So we have a condition here called user AID. So in my case, obviously my user AID is the user ID, right? So here, this is user AID is my user ID. So obviously I will actually fail this condition, right? If user ID is this thing, then it actually says like, no, not allowed. You cannot click on your own link. You can only share this link, right? If it's not, if user ID is not this, let's say it's somebody else, so it actually goes and checks whether it's an old player. Now remember, I am adding a tag, right? So this tag is also added in the beginning of the welcome message, like the flow, the actual flow the user enters. So if this is an existing player, so this condition is to check whether they are an existing player or not. If this tag is already present, then it means it's an existing player. So obviously, again, nothing happens here. It just drops off. Okay. If no, then it means it's a new player. So all this action happens. So we are adding a tag. We are collecting their name. We are storing it into user B, and then we are sending a external request to collect the user A ID's details, and then we are collecting. We are sending a tag. We are adding a tag to user A ID, which actually triggers two rules in the backend, and then finally it actually checks for user email. If user email is present, it goes, or like I said, you want to send a Telegram notification, Facebook notification, whatever it is, and if they click on this button, they will enter here. So yeah, now let's say, let me just publish this, and let's see what happens when I click. Okay, I'll click on this. See, it says not allowed, not allowed, not allowed. You cannot click on your own referral URL, right? You cannot click on this own referral link. You can only share this. So exactly what I wanted, right? Now there's one more scenario. So what happens is sometimes, like even though this one works, like this flow works, we give them this message. But remember, they actually it's a ref URL to go into a the welcome message. In my case, it goes to the welcome message. So what happened is basically, even though we give them this information, this condition is to avoid getting them more bonus points and all that stuff by clicking on their own link. But it will still trigger the flow, the welcome message flow. So we need to avoid that, right? So what I've actually done is basically we there's a small hack I've done. So obviously it entirely depends on your use case. If you want to do that, you can do it. That's totally fine. So this is my welcome message. So my welcome message starts with a condition tag is not old player, so which means it's a new player. Then it goes. Now what happens is if tag is old player. So if you remember, like if it's an existing user, it will be old player. Remember that, right? So it fails, it will come here. I have added a new condition called session through ref. So basically, if the ref parameter has refer friends or refer friends -tg, because for to cover both Telegram and Messenger, it checks this. If yes, like in my case, it was yes, right? It just drops off. I mean, obviously, I'm not doing anything here. It just drops off. If no, which means it's a genuine user, they haven't come through the referral URL. They have come through different URL. So it will go through my standard quiz, and then the standard flows will come into the picture. So this is entirely your situation, like how you want to handle this. You can do that. But this is a fail safe number two I have, apart from my this fail safe and this fail safe to ensure the new existing players do not click on their own URL and then doing it again and again and again. So yeah, so that's it, guys. I know this is like a like this involves a lot of moving parts here. So let's organize this by points. Okay, so first you decide which flow is going to be the entry point for the new user that comes in. So in my case, it was a welcome message, right? Welcome message for the quiz board. Now, once that is decided, you create a ref URL. So you can do it for both Messenger and Telegram. So make sure the message tags are set up properly. Either use a omnichannel tag or use a Telegram and Messenger tag for the relevant URLs and generate the relevant ref URL. So for example, the Messenger URL will be m.me with ref. And if it's a Telegram tag, it will be t.me and it will have start. And then you can, this is your, what do you call that? Ref parameter, right? And then you actually store this when you're creating the ref parameter. You are actually also storing the value to a payload, to a custom field. We'll be passing the uh, user ID as a payload, and that will be stored into a custom field called user AID. Now, when the user B clicks on the link, so what happens is basically a check happens. It first checks whether user A is equal to user ID. If yes, then it throws a error message saying like you cannot click on a one link. If not, then it checks whether the tag is old player. So if it's a old player, then again it drops off. If not, then what happens is we add a tag. Again, all this is customizable until you play. I am adding a tag here, and then I'm actually adding user B's name. So to this particular custom field. After that is done, I am actually we are sending API calls. We are sending two API calls. One to get the full details of user A, like get their full name, get their email ID, and then after that is done, we send a post action, post call to basically add a tag to the user ID, user A ID. So we need to create this tag beforehand and then get the tag ID, keep it ready, and just add it here. Once that's done, we are going to check the user email has any value. If yes, we are sending an email. So obviously, like this is customizable. You can do it Telegram. You want to do it Messenger, SMS, and then your call. So right now I'm doing it in email. Obviously, this will be like entirely customizable. So now, guys, think. If this happens, right? It says user email has any value. It says yes. Now, let's say if it doesn't have any value, right? What I can do, I can always come back. Then I'll just add a block saying like, do you want to be notified? Like whenever a new referral happens, gets done. Yes. If the user says yes, do you want to do it by email? If they say yes, it's a very good option. It's a very good entry point to get the user's email ID. So it's a very good value there, right? So, like I said, it's entirely how you wanna play this game. Like it's a very good opportunity to collect the email IDs and mobile numbers, or even get them into your Telegram channel and all that stuff. So the opportunities are like limitless in this case. Even like I'm getting more and more ideas how to improve this further. So this will be like, think of this like just the phase one of the referral program. So my phase two will be more, right? And once so we can actually use this to get the email ID of the user, right? So yes, guys, I know this has been a long video, so please take your time, go through it. Feel free to ask any questions you might have. You can post your questions in the YouTube video itself, or even in the chat race community Facebook group. I'll be very happy to answer it. And yeah, don't forget to like my videos, subscribe the channel, and so on. We got lots of videos coming up. I will already planned multiple videos for this, like for this particular quizbot, using quizbot as an example, and then primarily on through Telegram, what we can do with Telegram and how we can do it. So guys, see you until then. Have a great day.